All right, we are live. Episode 2 of the Longevity Hour podcast with me, Coach Milad, and
me, Coach Ryan.
Damn, dude, you picked that up well. We didn't even rehearse that. Just on a level.
Good improv. That was a tough one.
Yeah. Great. Years of experience. Years of back and forth. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for hopping on. Thanks for joining us. It's 2025. New year, new me, new you, new everyone. The 3rd of January, 2025. That's when it is right now. That's how it be.
It's been 25 years since it was the year 2000.
Yeah, that's crazy. You remember the year 2000?
I do. I was just moving to San Jose, the family and I.
Damn. That's crazy. From Seattle.
25 years.
Wow. It's beautiful. Yeah. So we're here, and to ring in the new year, we're going to talk about longevity. Just going over, what that even means, because it's something that's thrown out there a lot. It's becoming a lot more popular in fitness and nutrition, just like training for longevity and eating for longevity. So today we're just going to define, what that even means. And it's not necessarily a academic style definition, but how we like to practice and coach and think about longevity when it comes to fitness. Today's primarily fitness. We'll cover nutrition a later episode because there's a lot to cover. So yeah, just running through that. But, I think just starting off, it's like super interesting, and I'm sure like Ryan, you can relate, like how everything we really like, the majority of the content out there for fitness is designed around aesthetics and not necessarily for functionality or longevity. Obviously it's changing, but still to this day, like the most popular fitness style of content is like bodybuilding or fat loss. And we kind of want to change that because that's not the real world. And, I think there's like stories to be said, like how you're influenced by that type of fitness content as you're first starting out. Cause like, obviously like whatever is most popular is what's gonna, if you're just starting on your journey, like you're going to be consuming the most popular type of fitness content. And more than likely that's going to be some sort of like bodybuilding or aesthetic based content. And I know that like me and Ryan, like that's how we kind of started. Well, not necessarily started, but like that's maybe who our idols were when we were first starting. I mean, like Ryan, what was your first experience with training? Like how would you train, and who were you kind of like using as your role models when you first started training?
Well, there was a lot of, I would go on bodybuilding.com, and there's, obviously a lot of bodybuilders on that site, but I would do just a lot of the programs from, that website. That was like a big influence when I started. I mean, and that's, your priorities change over the years, but that's what I was interested in. Like when I first started, it was all about like, I just want to get jacked, that was like, my teen years, I just want to be jacked. But, I mean, my dad was the one who actually got me into fitness. And so, yeah, we would go to the gym together, and that was nice. He was like my personal trainer. So that was nice. But yeah, a lot of bodybuilding influences to start off with.
What was your dad's philosophy? Training philosophy?
he was all about Arnold, dude. He wanted to be Arnie for sure. He was all about it. He had that book, the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding or something like that. So yeah, I guess it did kind of trickle down to me too early on. That was what we were about when I started to work out.
That's awesome.
What about you?
Yeah, I think like, reflecting on this question, I actually think that my first introduction to like the gym wasn't really bodybuilding or even like aesthetic based stuff. It was more for performance, specifically to like get better at basketball or get bigger for basketball and volleyball and just improve my performance. So I was more so doing it to just get stronger and put muscle mass on and lose fat so I could, like, come off the bench for basketball was like I was always riding the bench, so I was trying to get faster and get bigger and stronger, so I could actually play. And then volleyball was to just I was a starter, so I would just try to like be the best leader that I can, be best role model, so just keep improving my performance. But I think like it took a while for me to even realize that there was like, oh wow, like most people are here in the gym to like look a certain way instead of like feel or like perform a certain way. And not that there's anything wrong with looking a certain way. I mean, we all want it, but it's just like the most popular thing, and it can kind of be misconstrued, or like if your deepest why is to I just want to look like this person who more than likely is on steroids, or like when they took that picture or that video, they were like dehydrated and at their lowest body fat. And on top of that, they have the genetics to boot that, that's a body type that you can never actually, look like. It becomes unrealistic and unhealthy. So that's kind of the distinction between like training for longevity and then, training for aesthetics or bodybuilding, right? So longevity, I think the way that we define it is like you're training for longevity when you're prioritizing increasing your lifespan while simultaneously increasing your quality of life. So not only do we want to live longer through exercise, but also like as we're living longer, we want to be functional and, be able to run, be able to jump, be able to hike, be able to play with our kids, be able to like just carry the groceries up the stairs without being winded at the age of like 90, right? So those are the differences. And I think that it's also important to note that like just because you're training for longevity doesn't mean you have to like not look like a bodybuilder. It's like it's not one or the other.
It's going to be a good side effect.
Yeah, that's like you can look great while training for longevity. It's just a different approach. But yeah, I mean, I think what has been your experience like going from bodybuilding.com to what you're doing now? Like, what was the biggest thing that made you change your training approach? And what did you add in, and how do you feel now with your new training approach, like going from bodybuilding to longevity?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, your priorities change. These days, I not only want to look good, but I want to feel good. And then also becoming a personal trainer, and, like none of my clients were like, yeah, I want to be a bodybuilder and stuff. It was all like, I just want to feel better. I want to be able to keep up with my kids and stuff. And so I think I started applying those values into my own training. But yeah, these days, it's more functional stuff, a little bit more balanced for me personally, like a little bit more cardio and mobility, more emphasis on like sleep, stress management. That's kind of how I would define my current training. But yeah, just, you grow up, your priorities change, want to feel better now these days.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, very similar. I think it was when I first started being a personal trainer, I realized that like I couldn't really like get as deep into a squat as most of my colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I remember this one time specifically, like when I was a physical therapy aide and a personal trainer, like I was showing I was showing a physical therapy client it's a supine, like laying on your back, hamstring or sciatic nerve glide. And I remember like when I was trying to extend my knee, so you're basically supposed to like fully like lay on your back, and then you're going to bring one leg up, and then you're going to try to like extend and straighten out your knee so that your leg is straight. So it's almost like you're an L, right? And if you have like pretty good hamstring flexibility, or your sciatic nerve isn't super tight and constricted, most people can kind of almost straighten out their knee. I could barely get past 90 degrees. And I remember like at the end of like the physical therapy shifts, like we would debrief with with our physical therapists. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I can't really extend my knee on the sciatic nerve glide. And she's like, oh, like, dude, what? Let me see it. And she's like, wow, your hamstrings are so freaking tight. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, you really need to work on that. And I was like, oh, like, how do I do that? And she kind of was like, oh yeah, just do these like sciatic nerve glides, and I would do them, and like, it didn't really help, which made me be like, okay, like I really need to dive into this and figure out how people are improving their flexibility. Like, even as personal trainers, like when you're taking your, let's even go further, right? Like when we were in San Francisco State and studying kinesiology, like, did anyone ever tell you like, hey, here's how you program to help improve your flexibility?
Oh, no, not really.
No. Like
No,
one
it was
ever
more
tells
like
you.
anatomy. It's like this is this muscle, this is the action.
Right.
Yeah, it was more geared towards that stuff.
Yeah. But no one was ever like, hey, like you should be able to extend your knee when you're laying on your back. And if you can't, here's exactly what you should do to like loosen things up. So I went on a journey, mostly like started at the hamstrings. And I learned, like I took certifications, and I learned that like mobility and flexibility training have to be treated just like strength training, right? If you want to get stronger, body weight squats aren't really going to do the trick, right? You're going to have to put some weight on, load the bar up. Same thing with like your hamstring flexibility. Some people can do 10 reps of 3 sets of like, a sciatic nerve glide and feel better and looser. But for me, I needed to hold a static hamstring stretch under a load where it was uncomfortable for 1 minute, at least three sets, at least 3 to 4 times a week. And after doing that and seeing the results, seeing that I could get deeper in my squats, seeing I could bend over without having to bend my knees, decreasing my knee pain, ankle pain, lower back pain, I was like, oh crap, like there's a whole nother world. And just like my movement quality improved so much. And I was like, all right, more mobility.
And seeing progress is fun.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so rewarding. And then you said cardio, so yeah, like once I started doing more cardio, everything else became easy. I was like I wasn't getting lightheaded when I stood up from the couch or sprinting out to get a delivery or whatever. So yeah, I mean it makes a huge difference. And even with our clients. So I actually have like you and I do a lot of like that functional training, longevity training. And one of my favorite things is like when our clients like share with us how our training directly relates to something that happens in real life or like an aha moment. So last night it was actually perfect because my client was telling me this story and I'm like, whoa, just stop and like, let me record this so we can share it on the podcast. So here we go. We're going to see if this works.
Oh, nice. Cool.
All right, Ali. Tell me exactly what you said about what you did after our session Monday night, after you went to the grocery store. Just tell me what you just said.
Okay. So I left the grocery store with a heavy bag of groceries. Saw my bus was coming across the street. Decided to run across the street with the heavy bag of groceries. And I made it to the bus. And I was completely unfazed and not out of breath.
Wait, say that last part again?
And not out of breath.
Not out of breath. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
So yeah, I love that. I love that story because not only is she strong enough to carry the groceries, but she's also, mobile and stable, and has enough cardio to make it across the street, catch the bus, get up on the bus, and not be winded. That like encapsulates exactly what like longevity and functional training is all about. And even another story that I had was my other client, Mira. Her dog had to have like emergency surgery, and she lives by herself, and her apartment has like maybe, I don't know, like just to go up like at least 20-30 steps to get to her apartment. And so she had to carry like Stella, her dog, which she's a poodle, so I think she's like pretty heavy. I don't know, like 40 pounds. I'm not good at dog weights. So she carried Stella up the stairs, no problem. And I loved hearing that story. Do you have any tidbits of clients and
similar to the first story that you said? I have a client, and she was like so grateful of our training, and it was funny. These stories are so funny because you tend to like forget that these are like the real life like benefits and stuff. But anyways, she was going to the airport. She was late for her flight for whatever reason. and she had a bunch of suitcases, and she was like stressed out, and so she had to like run with her heavy ass suitcases to the flight, and she made it just in time. And it's just funny, she thought of us and our training, and she's like, thank you so much. I was able to like make my flight because of all the, you know, the cardio and the strength training. And there's an exercise called suitcase carries, right? And so she's like, thank you for making me do all those things. I was able to make my flight. So yeah, that was a funny story.
Yeah. I love hearing those stories. They always just make me so happy. But yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. You know, just getting strong for that. But also, you know, the crazy thing is when you focus on training for that, the cardio, the mobility, flexibility, the strength, you end up in the best shape of your life regardless. So it's like a win-win either way. And you also don't develop like an eating disorder or a body image issue at the same time, because your goal isn't based on aesthetic outcomes. It's based on more performance and qualitative things like how you feel, and how proud of you are, how proud of yourself you can become. So
yeah, you can't make, sorry to interrupt, you can't make the mirror your only source of like validation for your training and like why you're training. Like there needs to be other, you know, reasons, unless you're, I get, you know, bodybuilder. But for Gen Pop,
yeah, I don't think there's any bodybuilders. maybe
you don't think Arnie, dude? I think Arnie is listening right now.
I mean, that would be sick. Shout out. But
shout out Arnie.
Shout out. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe even saying like, if you do have an aesthetic-based goal, back it up with 3 non-aesthetics. Yeah, like a 3-to-1 ratio.
Or,
know?
Yeah, like a deeper why. Like, why is that important to you? You know what I mean? Is it, go a little bit deeper than that. Why do you have this goal? You know, why is it important to you? It's usually something deeper than wanting to look good. You know, there's a deeper why.
What is your deeper why for training?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Well, I don't know. I just feel my best self when I am just feeling good. I can show up for not only myself, but for my fiance, for my clients. That's you know, I value that a lot, being a good coach, being a good partner. You know, and part of, you know, working out gives me a structure and a routine. And I think I thrive off of, you know, structure and routine. I'd say off the top of my head, those are, you know, that's my why. Just being the best person that I can be.
Hell yeah. Nice.
You got a why?
Yeah, I think like the thing that pops out the most is just kind of setting personal records right now is my big why, because I'm doing a lot of like running, and, you know, my strength training complements my running. So, you know, every year I'd like to do something that I've never done before physically. And that's kind of the deeper why. So this year it's going to be a marathon. Last year it was like running a fast half marathon, and then even just running like 20 miles in one go. So when I do that, it really, I don't know, it just makes me so grateful and also like proud and almost surprised. Like I'm like, damn, I can't believe I did that. And I want to continue to do those things. So that's my biggest why at this moment. And I think, you know, for Gen Pop, like, you don't even need to have crazy whys like that, because if you don't exercise at all, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And specifically, like, I always just say, like, after the age of 30, because there's a lot of like literature and research around what happens to muscle mass, cardio, strength, power output, flexibility, tissue capacity after your 30s if you don't do anything about it. So I mean, specifically when it comes to muscle mass, if you're sedentary after the age of 30, like we know this for sure, you lose 3 to 8% of your muscle mass per decade. And that compounds, right? So like the power of compounding interest. So same with the power of compounding muscle loss. It can really mess you up, right? To the point where you're frail, you're weak, and you lose your independence as early as the age of 50. So that's a pretty freaking big deal. The next thing that actually isn't touched on a lot, and even I think this is like a part of my own training, and I'm not sure if you relate to this, that I find that I'm not doing enough of, and this year I'm going to probably try to do more of, is power output, right? So We can define power as your ability to express your strength at a higher rate of speed. So strength times speed, right? So like being able to jump or cut or land, or even just sprint. And it's a lot, you lose it a lot faster than you do your muscle mass or even your strength. So power loss is 3 to 5% every year. So that's year, not decade, after the age of 30. So, that's going to be something that translates to not being able to get off from the ground. Again, like sprinting to catch a bus, forget it, or even just landing, like what if you have to jump and land? You ask a lot of people, when was the last time you jumped? Be like, dude, I can't remember the last time I jumped. Or even like, when was the last time you sprinted? It's like, oh, I don't remember the last time I sprinted. And that's something that I'm aware of too. Like I run a lot, but it's a lot of like medium to lower intensities. And if it is higher intensity, it's like higher intensity during a longer duration. So I can't really, it's not like, okay, 0 to 30 seconds. And then I'll go and I'll do something like a sprint. I'll sprint like a mile as fast as I can. And the next day, I feel like I strained some muscles, or even like landing, because I've rolled my ankles so many times. Landing hurts. And I know that I need to get better at landing, or even just jumping. What's your experience with power? Like, are you training power right now, Ryan? And
sort of. Yeah, kind of. I have recently been more intentional in like the concentric of my lifts. So that's like the pushing or the power part of lifting. So like squats, I've been doing this tempo where I go 4 seconds down and then explode up. And so
nice.
I've been doing that with like squats, bench press, shoulder press, a lot of the primary exercises that I do. I've been trying to be more intentional, like exploding with the concentric. But now that you mention it, I don't know. Yeah, I might want to get into like, I don't know, cleans and power cleans. I never really got into that stuff, to be honest, but maybe I'll think about it.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same. And I think one thing that I've been playing around with is kettlebell stuff. So a little bit easier, I feel like, a little bit approachable than going into like Olympic lifting. But you can do, like kettlebell cleans, snatches,
Yeah,
swings,
that is a good idea.
And like plyometrics, things like that. And
Have you been doing plyos?
Yeah. So I've been putting them
Nice.
just like in the longevity program. Like I'll put them at the start, like do my dynamic warm up, and then I do the power stuff. So I'll do like a circuit of like 3 exercises. So I'll start with like an upper body plyo. I'll do a kettlebell power, like either a clean, snatch, or swing, and then I'll do like a lower body plyo, and that'll be my power thing. And then I've been tossing in sprinting, like interval training too, for my runs. And I don't know, it's been hard. Like it's just so humbling, because it's like if you don't train, like if you don't use it, you lose it. Even if you are like, hey, I can run 20 miles, like, okay, but you can't sprint that well. So, it's important. So, I ask yourself, like, hey, when was the last time I sprinted or jumped? That's a good
And that's
question.
all under the umbrella of power.
Power. Yeah, exactly. And so the other stuff to worry about if you're not training or exercising after 30, you're going to lose a bunch of bone density. A lot more common in women, due to like hormonal changes during pre and intra and post menopause. So you like your bones just become fragile if you're not loading them. Like your bones crave being put under load, because that's how they regenerate, and that's how they get stronger and stay stronger. And if you're not doing that, you can fall and break a hip just pretty easily after the age of 50.
Yeah, very important as you age, bone density.
Yeah, it's huge. And then cardiovascular capacity, obviously, like this is something we all experience. If you're not doing any cardio, you'll know that you get out of breath pretty easily, and that's directly tied. There's so many studies showing, your VO2 max, which is your ability to express aerobic output, or just how well your cardio is. The better your cardio, the longer you're going to live. And then lastly, just talking about like flexibility. So you're also going to lose a ton of flexibility, especially you sit all day, joint range of motion, even the stiffness of your tendons, which could lead to tendonitis, tearing your Achilles tendon, all that stuff. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong, but it's pretty easy to prevent this stuff. Or if you even if you're someone like, hey, like I'm whatever, you're listening to this and you're 40 and you're like, damn, like is it too late for me? No, it's not. Like you can get all this back like in 12 weeks. It's pretty doable. So that kind of takes us to our next like point is, you know, our longevity exercise system, you can call it, or like the 4 pillars of our longevity training. Do you want to tell the folks, Ryan, what we do or what the foundations are?
We have resistance training. We have flexibility and mobility. We have prehab training, and we have cardiovascular training.
Yeah, so those are kind of our like 4 main foundational pillars of what, you know, you got to kind of do a little bit of all that stuff in order to train for longevity. So I think like starting with resistance training, you know, pretty simple. Just trying to just move heavier things, right? So you can kind of think about the resistance training as a means of making more muscle, maintaining that muscle, increasing your strength, keeping your strength, and also moving quickly with strength, so power. You can kind of think of it as like, you know, your muscles and your strength is like an insurance policy as you go deeper and deeper into life. It's going to protect you from falls. It's going to keep you independent, and it's going to keep you out of the doctor's office. You want to go over movement patterns when it comes to like resistance training for longevity specifically?
Yeah, for sure. So some key movement patterns. We have pushing exercises, and we can break pushing exercises into 2 categories, like horizontal pushing, like things like push-ups or bench pressing, and then vertical variations like an overhead press or a shoulder press. So those are your pushing exercises. And it's funny thinking of, we were talking about benefits of like exercising and stuff earlier and like client stories and stuff. And when I say overhead pressing, I think of one of my old clients. He came and he was like, oh, I'm so happy I was able to lift up my granddaughter and like throw her up in the air. And he was just like so stoked. He was like, he related it to the shoulder pressing. So that's pushing exercises. We have pulling exercises. You can break that down into horizontal and vertical again. So horizontal pulling, like rows, like any variation, like dumbbell row, cable row, things like that. Vertical pulling, things like pull-ups or chin-ups or lat pull-downs, things like that. That's going to be really good for anytime you do like a pulling exercise. I think of, you know, it's really good for your shoulder blades and shoulder health. Posture, things like that. So pulling exercise is very important. Also like underrated. I think so many, especially guys, they're really into like bench pressing and like, shoulder pressing and stuff like that. It's important to not forget about the pulling exercises. Pulling exercises is super, super important in your program. So then we have squat pattern. So things like body weight squats, you could do split squats, goblet squats, barbell back squats, barbell front squats, single leg variation squats. Very good lower body exercise. The fundamental lower body exercise, the squat pattern. That's going to help you later on in life being able to get up out of a chair like pain-free. Toilet, there you go. Even more important.
That's
toilet.
Huge.
Yep.
Forget the chair.
Toilet exercise. And then we have a hip hinge variation. So things like deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts, things like you mentioned kettlebell swings earlier. Good mornings. That is an example of how that will benefit is, picking up the groceries off the ground, picking up anything heavy off the ground. Like you hear so often like people injuring their back from like picking up something incorrectly or, and it hurts their lower back. So, hip hinge movements can help with that stuff. Another underrated fundamental movement pattern I'd say is carrying exercises. So I mentioned suitcase carries. That's when you have like two heavy dumbbells, one in each hand, and you just walk in a straight line for about 60 to 75 seconds. Farmer's carry is just a single arm variation of that. An overhead carry, a little bit more advanced. But those exercises are really good. That's going to help improve your grip and your core, and some hip muscles. Carrying exercise is often overlooked, a very good exercise pattern there. So I'd say those are the key movement patterns. One more time: pushing, horizontal, vertical; pulling, horizontal, vertical; squat, hip hinge, like a deadlift, and carrying exercises. I might add lunging, which is kind of like, squat pattern a little bit, but I'd say like lunging is also a good kind of movement pattern, like a reverse lunge or a forward lunge or a lateral lunge even. So I'd throw lunges in there too.
Yeah. The single leg stuff.
Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it. Some people like to toss in like anti-rotation of the spine, anti-flexion and extension of the spine. And those are good, but also, if you don't necessarily need them, you'll if you're learning how to squat properly and hinge, you'll be using your core. But you can talk about, like
especially early on.
Yeah, like an anti-extension core exercise, like a plank, basically. Anti-rotation, side plank, dead bugs, bird dogs, things like that. But, if you have minimal time, the 6 or so variations that or movement patterns that we talked about are the ones that you want to really prioritize for longevity. And then lastly, it's the power development stuff that we were just talking about that we need to kind of focus on ourselves in our own training. So basically being able to move things quickly, move load quickly, starting with like plyometrics, box jumps, working on landing from a higher up surface, and then adding weight through kettlebell swings, snatches, cleans, pogo jumps, things like that. And the best way to toss that in is to just do that at the start of your workout. So do your dynamic warm-up, and then do your power stuff when you're super fresh, and then go into the movement patterns that we just talked about. In regards to just how you would kind of fit this in, how do you like to program your resistance training, like in terms of like a weekly and, how to make things harder and, what are you usually doing with that?
Yeah, for like general population, I usually use the range for resistance training. I usually say 2 to 4 times a week is going to be great. Again, it just depends on a lot of things. What is realistic? I think that's the biggest thing. Like, what can we fit into your schedule? Maybe it's just 2 right now, or 2 around the holidays or something like that. But then in the summer you have more availability. Okay, bump it up to 3 or 4 times a week. But yeah, I'd say that's a good range to start with, 2 to 4 times a week of resistance training. You'd agree with that?
Yeah.
2 to 4? Yeah.
That's all you really need, especially if you are actually, going in there with the intention of like pushing yourself. 2 to 4 times is definitely going to be enough, because again, we also have to toss in some cardio. And we have to do some mobility training, because again, this is longevity, and this isn't necessarily bodybuilding or aesthetics, right? So this is a little bit different, and for some people that might be scary, like, oh, I'm not going to be in the gym like 6 times a week. It's like, no, but you'll be moving, at least 5 times a week. So that's something to take into consideration, and we'll go over recovery and stuff like that later on, because that plays a role in this too. Wait, did we already go over like rest times and things like that, or no?
No, we haven't yet.
Okay.
You want to talk about like rest time, like in between days, like in between sessions and stuff?
No, like rest times during your training. So
okay, yeah, that's a good. Oh my God, that's such an important topic, because so many people think, especially, I don't know, early on, or if they've done like a group workout class before. I don't know. So many people think like rest time is overrated, or you only want to rest like 10 seconds in between sets or in between exercises. Like, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm good. Like, come on, let's go again. Where it's like, you're going to benefit so much more. You're going to get so much more of the resistance training benefits if you lower your heart rate in between sets, because you're going to be able to push more weight or push for the same weight with more repetitions. compared to if you only take like 10 seconds rest, your heart is still like beating pretty fast. So you're not going to be able to have the same power output. And in a resistance training workout, that's our main goal. Our main goal is, to work, the muscle. So rest times, it depends on where you're at in the workout. But like for your first 2 exercises, like the main ones that you're prioritizing, you want to rest anywhere from like 1:30 to 3 minutes if you're like going really heavy in between sets. And it depends on if you're supersetting and things like that. But normally, yeah, like when you say, okay, rest 1:30, a lot of people think that's a long time. And they're like, after 30 seconds, they're like, I'm ready to go. Come on. It's like, no, like lower your heart rate, actually give yourself the rest, because you're going to be able to lift more on the subsequent set and therefore get stronger and reap all the rewards that you're really after. Yeah. Do you want to add anything on rest and recovery?
Yeah. It's super important, and it's kind of like it's going to make a huge difference. Basically, you need to be like, okay, so let's say we're doing like a push-up, right? And you're prescribed, or you want to do 3 sets at 8 reps. So at the end of that 8th rep, you should only really be able to do 1 to 3 more reps. That's how hard it should be. And if you have 10 more that you can do, then you need to make it harder. So add some weight on your back, whatever you need to do to make it harder, go slower. So if you are doing your 3x8 of your squat or your push-up or whatever, and you find yourself wanting to go before 90 seconds of rest, 1:30 seconds of rest, then that means you're not using enough weight, or it's not hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean you have to go super heavy. Maybe you need to do more reps. Maybe you need to go slower. But you really need to challenge yourself during resistance training in order to build muscle, build strength, and all that stuff. Same with the power development. When it comes to power development, reps should be a little bit lower, because it's going to get harder and harder to be powerful. So like, you don't really want to go over 10 reps when it comes to the power stuff, ideally in that 5 to 8 rep range, and taking that 90 seconds at least. So those are huge. And then the other thing is, make sure you're recording your weights or your reps. Whether that be through an app or a notebook or whatever, it's super important to understand what weight you did last time or how many reps and what the rest time was, so that you can just improve upon it the next go around. That's how you make progress. And don't expect to remember what you did on the squat last week. You're not going to remember. Even if you try to guess and you think you're right, you're probably going to be wrong.
Everyone thinks they're going to remember. You're not going to remember what you did last week. Write it down.
Yeah. The best way to see progress in the gym is taking the adequate rest time, at least 90 seconds, and writing down your weights and trying to go a little bit harder. Like, super simple, but it's just like one of those habits that people often just forget about, or they're too lazy to do. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it when it comes to the resistance training stuff. Let's dive into flexibility and mobility. So I want to talk about definitions, because like flexibility and mobility are tossed around a bunch, and there's like an interesting history behind the nomenclature and the semantics. Basically, in the literature, or in the peer-reviewed science articles, research articles, mobility is defined as the ability to express movement within space. So how easily you can move, basically. How it's become to be known now in like social media or like fitness marketing, it's more of like doing fancy mobility, like flexibility drills, or like showing off a lot of flexibility and strength at the same time. Certain certifications or experts, they say that flexibility is passive and mobility is active, which is not necessarily true. Like, mobility was made super popular as like an active flexibility thing. I think it was by Kelly Starrett, Dr. Kelly Starrett, who wrote the book Becoming a Supple Leopard, which is super awesome, by the way. He started doing the banded mobilization. I don't think he started doing it, but he's the one that popularized it and put it into the culture, and the foam rolling and stretching and all that stuff. But for our purposes right now, to simplify things, we're gonna basically use flexibility as our higher level definition for joint range of motion and the elasticity of your muscles and like your achiness and your looseness like that. So basically, the flexibility is one of the pillars of longevity, right? So flexibility is your ability to, move your joints in a certain range of motion. And there's active flexibility, and then there's passive. So like you can think of active flexibility as if I'm laying on my back and I lift up one of my legs straight into the air. That's the active flexibility of me being able to flex my hip, and that tells me how tight or loose my hamstrings are and how much hip flexion I can show off in that supine position. Passive flexibility is if Ryan grabbed my hamstring or my foot and moved it up over my hip. Typically, you have more passive flexibility than you do active flexibility. That's totally normal. So, types of flexibility, we went over that. How you can improve flexibility or mobility is through a couple different ways. So there's dynamic stretching. It's basically like your dynamic warm-up. Think about like a world's greatest stretch. Think about those, even that like the sciatic nerve glides, just things like that where you're moving, but you're still moving into like a deeper range of motion, right? Static stretching, which is holding a stretch, basically like reaching down, trying to touch your toes, holding that position. A pigeon stretch, not moving, but being in that stretch position. And then you have loaded stretching, where you're using an external weight or even the contraction of the antagonist muscle group to facilitate stretching. And loaded stretching is a little bit more dynamic than static. So we can use all of those three to improve joint range of motion and improve overall flexibility. In terms of some areas that you want to focus on, basically, to keep it simple, focus on the joints that have the most amount of freedom or degrees of motion, right? So that's your shoulder, where you can move it in almost 360 degrees. That's your spine. You can twist it, flex it, extend it. That's your hips. And then after that, probably your ankles, right? That's another one. Ankles don't move as much, but they move a lot. And because we're always making contact with the ground, that's an important part. So basically focusing on those areas and stretching the muscle groups around those areas. And most people, because they sit at a desk all day and they kind of have similar movement patterns, like they'll have a tight chest, tight mid-back, overactive traps, tight hip flexors. They're not really great at using their glutes. And their ankle mobility isn't too great as well. And when it comes to how much flexibility training you should be doing, I think there's two things that are really important here. Time under tension and frequency throughout the week. So if you are someone that is tight, the best way, if you're tight and you've been sedentary and you don't have too much resistance training experience, the best way to just improve your flexibility is just doing static stretching. It's just that simple. And make sure you hold whatever stretch you are doing for at least a minute, at least 1 minute. Every time my cousins were over today and we went on a little run, and then they're like, hey, can you like do a little stretching routine after the run? I'm like, yeah. And I took out my timer and we did a minute, and they're like, damn, you're supposed to hold it for a minute? And you have no idea how many times I've heard this. Like, people aren't used to holding stretches for a minute. And technically, like, if you really want it to be effective, it should be 2 minutes, but I start people at 1. So make sure you're holding that stretch for at least a minute, or else you're not going to see change, and it's kind of useless. That's the biggest thing. And then make sure you're stretching at least 3 times a week. That's all I care about when it comes to mobility and flexibility work. And it's going to help you move better. Like, you'll get deeper in squats, you'll feel less achy, and it'll help prevent injuries or mitigate injuries when they happen. Which kind of goes into our next thing, which is like prehab training. So usually prehab is like prehabilitation, like, or pre-surgery training. Like, you're going in to get your ACL repaired, so you want to make sure your hips are super strong and your quads are super strong so that you don't lose too much muscle while you're recovering from your surgery. Nowadays, prehab training, it can be thought of as preventative training, right? So whether that be to mitigate injuries or to prevent certain injuries, that's what prehab training is. And what that looks like is working on stabilizing muscles, working on balance. So you want to focus on Your shoulder complex, so like your rotator cuffs, making sure those are really strong. So when you're doing overhead exercises, you're doing pulling exercises, you don't end up with things like tendonitis or rotator cuff tears. Making sure your scapula can move in all of its degrees of motion. There's a lot of people that don't know how to move their scapula, and it's something that you kind of have to unlock. Next, we have our spine. So I guess this is kind of, I know we were talking about the core stuff, but like, I guess this is where the core stuff kind of comes in, right? It's more of a preventative thing. So for your spine, the best way to kind of decrease your chances of like throwing your back out or, you know, slip discs, things like that, is to make sure your core is rock solid and you have great mobility in your spine. So dead bugs, planks, side planks, and then just scaling it from there. Then we're going to look at our hips. So the hips are kind of like the gateway to your knees and your ankles and probably your spine. So making sure your glutes, especially your glute medius, it's this little baby muscle on the side of your hip, making sure that that's a strong, muscular, jacked muscle, right? There's so many times where I've helped runners or even just clients with back pain, knee pain, just start doing very simple glute medius drills, which they look like nothing. Like they don't look like they would be challenging. Like they get a workout. Like they're struggling to lift their legs up. So glute medius stuff, hip stability stuff. And then lastly, for the ankles, we were kind of focusing on just like your calves and then the muscles on your shins, the side of the shins and the front of the shins, your tibs, making sure you have good balance, good ankle mobility, and just working like eccentric slow calf raises to make sure that Achilles tendon is nice, elastic, stiff, and robust. So that your chances of like, you know, tearing that Achilles goes down. I don't ever say you can like, it's hard to say that you can prevent injury, but you can definitely mitigate it, right? And if you do all this stuff, your chances of injury becomes a lot lower. Or I like to say, like, when you get injured, the recovery time is pretty quick. Like, you know, I'll probably sprain my ankle at least 2 to 3 times a year. Like, that's just how it works when you have multiple ankle sprains. But instead of it taking 3 months to get back to running, it takes like maximum 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm back to biking like literally the next day. So that's kind of the big stuff when it comes to prehab. In terms of frequency, again, this is something that you can incorporate into your training. So you don't have to spend like 30 extra minutes just like doing rotator cuff exercises. You can superset, you know, your lower body stuff with your upper body resistance training stuff. You could do them at the beginning of the workout. Like for example, like I think in our longevity program on the app, like we just have like a movement prep thing that we do before the power exercises, and it's like glute medius activation, it's calf raises, and then there's some rotator cuff work in there too, and then some core stuff that we do after the workout. So these are things that you could just incorporate in, and I encourage you to figure out ways to incorporate them into your gym sessions, so you're not doing that thing where you're like, oh, I'll do abs when I get home, or I'll do prehab when I get home, or I'll do stretching when you get home, because you'll never do it when you get home. Yeah, so that's the prehab stuff. And then I think the last thing that we got a couple more things, but the last thing in terms of pillars is cardio. So when it comes to cardio, there's 2 things that we want to look at, 2 main subcategories of our cardiovascular training. So the one subcategory is zone 2 training. So it's nice and slow for long durations. So zone 2 training, you can think of it as being able to have a conversation while doing your cardio and being able to do that for at least 30 minutes, upwards of 2-3 hours. So what that does is that lays the foundation of your cardiovascular capacity. So that makes it so that when you run up the stairs, you're not out of breath. Or when you get up from the couch, you don't get dizzy or anything like that. That gives you more capillaries. It opens up your blood vessels. It makes your lungs better at breathing, amongst other things. It decreases your resting heart rate. So it just makes you a better human being. So that's one part of it, zone 2 training. And then we have zone 5, so higher intensity training. So that's what you want to think about. It's like 90% of your heart rate. It's going to be impossible to talk during zone 5, high intensity training. So this is things like sprinting or increasing your pace during longer runs, swims, road biking, whatever. This is like, most of your cardiovascular training should be the zone 2, like the easier stuff. So I would say about, 80%, 80 to 90% is easy, long distance stuff. And then 10 to 20% is going to be that hard intensity sprints, getting up there with your heart rate, not being able to talk. So that's the cardio stuff. And the way that you can implement that, I always say, just do that on the days you're not in the gym. Or if you don't have time, just do it after your resistance training workouts. But the big thing is, when it comes for general population, do your cardio after your resistance training. Because when you're resistance training and you're trying to get the most power out of your lifts, you're going to use a lot of glycogen and carbohydrates. And a surefire way to decrease glycogen stores is to run or to do cardio. So we want to make sure we have as much glycogen and carbs in our system when we're doing our resistance training, so we can move as much weight in the most efficient manner possible. And then we do the cardio stuff. And you can refuel in between if you're doing it on the same day. But if you are doing it on the same day, make sure you start with resistance training. And yeah, it doesn't have to be running. You could do hiking, incline walking, cycling, swimming, rowing, sex. That's cardio.
That's zone 5 right there.
Yeah, it's zone 5. Zone 5 for about a minute. And then back down to zone 2. Just kidding. Yeah, so whatever you want. But yeah, just do cardio. It's really good. It's going to make you feel good. And the cool thing about cardio is that it only takes like a week or 2 weeks to feel the difference, unlike, all these other modalities. So do cardio, you'll feel better, you'll be a better person. And those are our pillars, the big 4. And I know that, Ryan, you were actually talking about this, like how part of your training is actually optimizing for recovery, sleep, all that stuff. So you're the wizard of that. So what do you got for us when it comes to like optimizing that stuff?
Yeah, super important, often overlooked in a training plan, is stress and sleep. And I think a big mistake is thinking that you can just pause your life and whatever stress you have in life just to focus on your health and fitness. When in fact, you have to fit all of that into your life, but also try your best to optimize your stress and sleep. And so we have different like modalities that we use with clients for stress and sleep. So we'll start with stress. So a big thing that we preach is meditation. I think meditation is a game changer. I think meditation can, one of the benefits of meditation is having you be more present. And if you are more present, you can make better decisions, whether that be with your nutrition or, when you're planning your week and scheduling your workouts, you're a little bit more present. So, meditation can really help with stress. Sleep also very overlooked. And if you are not sleeping, like if your sleep quality is trash, your recovery from the gym and your resistance training is not going to be as optimal, and you're not going to see as much as the benefits as you could be. So sleep and stress, very important. Other modalities we have is like journaling. Journaling is, I think, really important for stress. Like we do a lot of brain dumps with our clients, and that is just like opening up a blank notebook and just writing everything down, like right before bed or first thing in the morning. Really good way to like just organize your thoughts and stuff like that. Yeah, sleep and stress, often overlooked. Important to kind of dive into that when you're thinking about your training program, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you add anything to sleep and stress management?
I think that, they go hand in hand, and it's really crazy how sleep can kind of turn you into like a superhuman, because most people get horrible sleep, including myself. I mean, my sleep has gotten a lot better, but, I would say it's not the best. Like my sleep on average is like a 7. Sometimes like out of 10, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's because I drink too much caffeine or I nap during the day. but that's on me, and I'm trying to be better. But sometimes I'll get a good night's sleep, and it's always funny. I'm at a hotel, and it's like they have the blackout curtains and the bed's super comfy.
Oh yeah.
And then the room is like 60 degrees because you can blast the AC. And I'll wake up and I'm like, holy shit! Like, is this how people feel? Like when you get good sleep, and everything is just dialed in. Like, no brain fog. My exercise is amazing. Like my lifts are great. I'm running. I'm happy. I'm stoked. I make better decisions during the day, especially with food. Like I find myself when I'm sleep deprived, I just want like sugar and fat. So get better sleep. You know, it's always funny. Like I know how to get good sleep, but I just don't do it. I acknowledge that it's hard. So the biggest things is to just make sure you're winding down before going to bed. So 30 minutes before, just try not to be on electronics, maybe get on a book, decrease your exposure to that blue light. Caffeine, try not to have any before or after noon.
Afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, don't nap longer than 30 minutes in the middle of the day. Exercise really helps. Some people I know, like if they exercise like closer to bedtime, it keeps them up. So exercise before noon. If you know that that's you.
I started using a sleep mask and earplugs,
nice.
That has been like a game changer for my sleep for sure.
But were you talking about? You were saying like, but you're like scared because you're like, you're in your own little world.
It is a little weird.
You can't see anything.
It's
so
a
like,
little.
What if someone's like breaking in and you're like?
Yeah, it's a little
you're dead
strange
asleep.
for the earplugs. Yeah. But sleep has been improved. Sleep mask and earplugs, game changer.
Yeah, you just get a dog. Just get like a attack dog.
Oh yeah. Good protocol.
Call him Ryan Jr.
RJ.
RJ, that's good. So sleep, and all of those things. Recovery is huge. Not saying that you can't, like you can get away with not doing those things, but the journey's going to be miserable, and you're not going to stick to it. So focus on that stuff.
If your stress is really high and your sleep is crap, that really has an effect on your body. We're talking about longevity, and stress is, obviously there's good stress. There's, you're going to be a little bit stressed in life, but too much stress really is just, there's a lot of negative adaptations that happen from chronic stress. So if you can figure out how to, control your stress, that's a game changer. And same thing with sleep. If you're lacking sleep, not good for your system, probably more likely to get injured, and not good for your body, not good for your system. So work on it.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of, longevity, we kind of went over all the modalities. I want to really quickly go over just what a sample week would look like. Cause we just talked a lot. We threw a lot at you. So you're like, how the hell am I supposed to fit mobility, prehab, strength, cardio, sleep in 1 week with kids and work and all this stuff? So here's how you're going to do it. And spoiler alert, it means you're going to kind of move every single day. I'm sorry, but that's something you're going to have to get used to. Movement every day. It doesn't have to be high intensity movement every day, but you got to move almost every single day. You get one full rest day. But okay, sample week. If someone's just beginning to incorporate and start doing longevity training, here's what a sample week looks like. So Monday, you're going to do a strength workout, and in that strength workout, you're going to do a little power training. Tuesday, you're going to do mobility, flexibility training, plus your zone 2 cardio. So that could be incline walking, hiking, light jog. And when you're first starting, I would just say shoot for 30 minutes. And then after like 8 weeks, bump it up to 45. Wednesday, again, flexibility day. Thursday, your second strength workout. Again, that's the power training's included in that. Friday, we're going to do a zone 5 or some sprints. And that doesn't have to be too much. It could just be quick, like 10, 20 minutes. Because that's going to be pretty high intensity. And then obviously your flexibility training. And then Saturday, you can either do another strength workout or you can do a long duration zone 2 run. So if you're first starting out, instead of 30, do 45 minutes, do an hour. And then Sunday is just going to be a full rest day. So really lean into that. Couch potato, chill out. I mean, don't overdo it with the foods, but just rest. Like give your body that rest and try to prioritize sleep. So then once Monday comes back around, you're feeling strong, you're feeling ready to go, and you crush it. And again, biggest thing here, make sure you are making things harder as the weeks progress when it comes to your cardio, when it comes to your power stuff, your resistance training, because you will eventually plateau. So make sure you're making it just slightly harder every week or every 2 weeks, things like that. And the biggest thing that I would say that we see, like, you know, when it comes to challenges and obstacles is like people start out and they're like, oh, I got to be perfect with this thing. They're like, I got to get all my strength training in. I got to do mobility, flexibility every day. If I don't do my sprints, then I'm off. So just the biggest thing here is, you know, be compassionate and graceful for yourself and just do as much as you can. And at a bare minimum, just shoot for 2 resistance training workouts and 2 cardio. And reject that all or nothing mindset. Because if you try to be perfect, you're going to fail and it's going to make you feel bad and then you're going to quit. Small wins is kind of the way to do it. And accountability helps too. You know, find some community, find someone that wants to do it with you, whether that be your spouse or a friend. Hire a coach. Us, if you want to hire us, we do this. Not a lot of coaches do this type of training. We can program your resistance training, dial in your nutrition and your cardio and your flexibility and your prehab stuff. That's a lot. And yeah, I mean, this was kind of a little bit on the broader side. So if you all have any questions, toss them down in the comments or whatever. We have an app with a beginner longevity program that will help you do all this stuff and give you an outline and workouts and everything for you to do. So you can start at a beginner, and after 12 weeks, you're going to be more flexible, more mobile, stronger. You're going to feel better, less aches, and less winded. So, and 30-day free trial of that. So you can literally try it for 4 weeks, full free. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today. And at the end, we usually like to kind of go over maybe some non-fitness related stuff, nutrition stuff, just kind of what we've been thinking about, reading. Anything you got for us, Ryan?
Yeah, we were talking about meditation earlier. I'm kind of like doubling down a little bit on the meditation. I am reading this book by, do you hear this guy, Joe Dispenza? You know who that is?
No.
Okay, he's like a meditation guy. I don't know too much about him, but I'm getting into him. I'm reading his book and just meditating more, a little bit more. I feel good about it. You know, that's kind of what's new with me, I guess.
Nice. What was any like big aha moments or like anything that made you feel like?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good.
Like,
yeah, for sure. That's a good question. So something that I've been focusing on that I've gotten through the book that I'm reading is that we all have goals in life and we all want to like accomplish certain things in life. And so this one, I guess, meditation practice, what it will guide you through is that you imagine your goal, you imagine accomplishing that goal and how it feels to accomplish that goal. And then, so basically the meditation gets you to like your body to feel that feeling of like, oh my God, I did it and I'm here now. And in the meditation, like, okay, stay with that. And then all of a sudden you're like feeling these good feelings, you know, in your mind and in your body. You're like, yes, I've accomplished it already. And I think there's something to it. You know, if you're like constantly feeling like confident, like, yes, I got this, you know, I've already accomplished it. I just need to like do XYZ actions. And you're feeling that way and your body is feeling that way, I don't know, maybe you're more likely to accomplish your goals or something. So that is kind of, I guess new for me.
Nice. Yeah. I dig that. Yeah, I love that like visualization technique of like, okay, how would you feel if you accomplish this? Like that's cool. Like you're almost like being rewarded with the prize, and that's like an incentive. Like, okay, this is, I know I'm going to feel like this. I kind of do that in a more in a negative way, where if I have like certain negative habits that I'm trying to like get rid of, and I'll be like, okay, like if you do this, imagine how shitty you're going to feel.
Oh,
And,
like what's the Christmas? Is that Scrooge?
sorry, I can't. It's like kind of breaking up. Is it breaking up for you?
I got a message that says like reloading or something.
Oh,
Is
here we
that
go. You're
better?
back.
Is that
Yeah, yeah,
better?
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I said
Your audio's
that's
cool.
like I was saying that's like Scrooge. You know?
What do
You
you
know
mean?
that
Like
story?
the Christmas guy?
Yes, yeah. He's
Yeah.
showing you if you do not change, your life will look like this,
Oh,
and it's like terrible.
the ghost of Christmas past.
Yeah, that's Scrooge, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, and that helps. But I also want to kind of reframe it and make it more positive instead of like almost like punishing myself or like having the perspective of negativity of like here's what could go wrong instead of like hey look what would happen if you succeeded. Like I
Yeah.
like that perspective better actually.
Well,
And
maybe
were
you could
talking
do
about
both. You could do both, I guess. You know?
that's true. But I feel
Yeah.
like I don't know. My thing is like there's already so much fucking excuse my French. There's so much negativity in the world that like I don't like negative reinforcement. Like I feel like I'm bombarded with negativity, like reading the news or whatever. Like it's just in life. It's baked in. So even if I can like gaslight myself with like positivity, it's better. Like, even if it's
Gratitude.
like cringy, yeah. Like I'm down for it.
Yeah, nice.
And yeah, I wanted to share. I'm reading this book called "Do Hard Things." It's all about why you should do hard things by this guy. He's like a journalist. He's like a long distance runner, but also reframing doing hard things in a kind of like compassionate way and in a way to like set good expectations and doing it in small chunks instead of like a David Goggins like beat yourself up, punish yourself kind of thing. So we were talking about confidence. So this is one thing I like outlined, and this is during this chapter is called "The True Confidence is Quiet, Insecurity is Loud."
Nice.
But basically, here's a phrase that I like: confidence doesn't come from doing work out of fear or neuroticism. To practice because you are afraid to lose or fail. When fear drives the motivational ship, then insecurity pervades. When the work is done in the name of getting better or enjoying the process of searching for mastery of the craft, then confidence gradually grows. Basically, like, I've been here before, I'm prepared for this challenge. A writer who shows up at his desk every day and writes, the dancer who spends countless hours perfecting her routine, and then the executive who game planned just about every scenario possible. So the result might not always end up as hoped, but the work provides a secure confidence founded in something concrete. So that's something I'm trying to embody, right? Like confidence that's earned through doing the work. And I have like on my phone screen, I have some reminders. I know it's like backwards, maybe it comes about forward, but basically like this kind of helps me remember, process over outcome, enjoy the process. Effort is a form of mastery, and make sure you're getting into a flow state at least 2 times a week, make some art, and give back. So confidence, we'll leave the people with that. True confidence, positivity, meditation. Anything else, Ryan?
Fall in love with the process.
Fuck yeah. Fall in love with the process. What's your favorite part about the coaching process? Just one thing before we leave.
What do you mean? Like coaching
Like
client? What do you mean?
Yeah, like the process of, coaching. Like what's one thing you are in love with from that?
Like taking someone from point A to point B, or being like, what's my favorite part of being a coach? Sorry, what are you asking?
No, like, okay, so like falling in love with the process, right? There's a process that you go through when you're coaching someone, and you have to be in love with it. What part of it do you like? Are you always stoked on?
For
For
me as a coach, or
Yeah.
I love seeing. We were talking about those stories earlier of our clients, like making it to the bus or making it to their flight, and hearing these like random benefits that you don't necessarily think of when you think of fitness. And I don't know, just hearing those stories and hearing people, it's nice helping people improve their lives, and hearing about it. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Okay, perfect. We love hearing y'all succeed. That was Longevity Hour, episode 2. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
See ya.